Hey guys, what is happening? Niad here with Film Comics Explained, and it's been a solid month here at the channel. I've been pumping out videos almost every day, which has allowed us to come to the conclusion of many books, including Nightmare Asylum, 28 Days Later, Climate of Fear, and Predator. There are plenty of more books in their respective series, and we'll be jumping back into them in a few days, but I wanted to break the routine up and introduce a new story that is still in the process of being printed. Skull Island, The Birth of Kong. 2 volumes have currently been released, with the 3rd coming out next month. Now, Skull Island, The Birth of Kong is a 4-part comic book issue by Legendary Comics that serves as both a sequel and a prequel to the Legendary Pictures feature, Kong, Skull Island. The series tells the story of a secret team of Monarch operatives returning to Skull Island to discover the truth behind Kong and the island he was born to protect. In doing so, they unlock an ancient history of monster conflict, witness the primal war between Kong and an otherworldly ecosystem of deadly new creatures, and finally reveal how this lonely god became the last of his kind. We pick up somewhere in the South Pacific, where the Australian Navy are responding to a Mayday signal. We witness 3 seamen approaching some wreckage. One of them says that they do not belong here, as these were dangerous waters, while another insists that they are still getting the Mayday signal. The signal gets stronger until they find the source of the beacon in the form of a Kevlar float bag with the Project Monarch emblem. One of them asks what's inside, and the captain tells him to leave it closed and radio in. For those of you who don't know, Monarch is a secret scientific organization created by Legendary Pictures that first appeared in the 2014 Godzilla film. They were a pivotal organization in the recent film Kong, Skull Island, and will appear once more in the 2019 film Godzilla, King of the Monsters. 2 weeks have passed, and we see 2 old friends reuniting. Houston Brooks shakes hands with his guest Singh, and is told he is looking good for a man that's about to retire after 40 years of working for Monarch. Brooks notes that he is surprised to see him here, but Singh assures him that he wouldn't have missed his big send-off. He then hands him a device and explains that it was a retirement present. He goes on to say that the Australian Navy had fished it out of the South Pacific in one of their Kevlar float bags. He explains that he had run the serial number and it belonged to Aaron, Brooks' son, who went missing and was last spotted in Antarctica. Brooks is confused and asks what he was doing in the South Pacific. Singh tells him they don't know, but the recorder was encrypted and their usual go-to hardware is tied up in other projects. He tells him that he shouldn't technically be here, but Aaron was his son. Brooks plugs it into his computer and tells us that if this really belonged to his son, he might be able to unlock it. We see him enter Galahorn, the Horn of Heimdall of Asgard. He'd essentially read Norse mythology to Aaron as a kid, and they used to always use it as a password. The password is accepted, and we see the device unlock. We then see Brooks driving in the rain with the device on the passenger seat. We can overhear an argument between Brooks and his son in the background, which occurred 17 years prior. Aaron had discovered his father's files on Kong and the entire island of monsters. He is furious that Monarch is deciding to leave it to a giant ape to deal with. He doesn't agree with the ideology of allowing nature to strike its own balance, which his father shared with fellow Monarch member Serizawa, who we saw in the recent Godzilla remake. His father explains that Kong is more than an animal, more than capable of protecting the world from monsters, so long as he is ruler of Skull Island. Brooks puts his foot down, insisting that he has lost many friends who believed in keeping the secret, before warning him to leave it alone. We see Aaron furiously storm off. We get a last glimpse of Brooks calling for his son, before he is snapped back to reality by the sound of a horn beeping behind him. He arrives at his quiet apartment complex and begins to play the recordings. The personal record of Aaron Brooks, August 7, 1995. My team and I are not going to study a Muto fossil bed in Antarctica. Our true objective is Skull Island. This recording's for you, Dad, more than anyone else. If you're listening, you're probably pretty pissed off at me. We can see a plane flying through a heavy storm with a small group of people led by Aaron. We weren't supposed to have any secrets, you and I. But hey, like father, like son. Turns out I have a knack for conspiracy too. He then introduces his father to the team he assembled, whom he calls a new breed of monster hunters. There's Evgeniy Medov, a cryptobiologist, Evelyn Matmivy, a genius whom his father had actually recruited himself, Helen Karsten, a survival expert, who also convinced the pilot to join them, and Walter Riccio, a mythographer. We see Aaron explaining to them that he will not be entrusting humanity's survival to a giant monkey, not without a little more assurance. He goes on to say that they will land, collect as much evidence as they can, and get out within 72 hours. Their pilot explains that they are clear of the storms, and he now has visual contact with the island. Aaron tells his father that his field notes were a big help, like the information on the giant storm surrounding the island. We can see a beautiful double rainbow as they fly towards some birds in the distance. Everything was going like they had planned, but we then see them getting attacked by psycho vultures, one of which has fired an electrical current out of its mouth into the side of the plane. The whole begins to destabilize the aircraft. Helen asks the pilot what that was, and he simply states that he has no idea, insisting that they use their drop chutes to get out of there. She asks him what he will do, and he turns his head and tells her that it's been an adventure of a lifetime working with her, before yelling at her to go. She instructs the crew to then leap out of the plane. We see the group falling from the clouds, with the vultures surrounding them. One of them points to the plane and says that it's not going to make it. We then see them beginning to pull their chutes. Walter notes that these creatures made it feel like they were diving through time. Carsten spots a clearing below them and advises them to aim for it and stay close. They all land relatively close to each other, and we see Aaron asking how they all were. Evelyn states that she has sprained her ankle but will walk it off. Helen is standing on a rock, looking into the open. She asks them to have a look, and we can see that they are in awe of what is in front of them. They look onto the primordial landscape, echoing the dawn of time, as Walter says that is beautiful. Medov tells them to take a look at their wings that were green and almost leaf-like. Evelyn then asks if they were the things that attacked them earlier. They scout their location, and Helen explains that their pilot, Sejudo, went down 3 clicks of them to the west. Aaron asks if he made it, insisting that this place was crawling with predators. Walter suggests that they make contact with the locals first, but Aaron disagrees, believing they should secure the supplies. His father's notes were vague on the natives, and he isn't even sure that they exist. Evelyn agrees with Aaron and tells him that Sejudo could be hurt. Walter reluctantly agrees, and we see them heading off. Aaron is glad to see that they are all in agreement, and we see him tell them that they will be able to hear a Muto long before it catches up to them, but is interrupted by what is ahead. We can see several Mutos resembling velociraptors bearing down on their position. Helen orders the group to head for the cave while she attempted to cover them. We see her pull out her sidearm and machete, but is caught off guard by the speed of the Muto that clamps around her waist with its enormous jaws. Walter looks back and yells out to Helen, who is literally being ripped apart by the Mutos. He's about to pull out his machete, but decides on the gun instead, as Evelyn yells at him to keep going. Walter and Medov then take up defensive positions at the entrance of the cave, and we see them firing at the horde of creatures running towards them. Medov tells them that there are too many, as we see the Mutos beginning to overpower the group. Aaron tells us that there is no way out. We then see a large fist hit the ground at the entrance of the cave with tremendous force, the shockwaves of which send them all flying a few feet. We then see a huge left hand reach in, before grabbing a fistful of Mutos and throwing them away. The other creatures begin to panic, and we see them flee. But as they run outside, we see a giant foot begin to shut out the sun, before eventually crashing down on the remaining Mutos. We can see Kong's enormous shadow being cast onto the foot of the cave. The group look on at Medov in horror. He has deep lacerations all across his body. Evelyn asks Aaron to give her some space to work, as Medov explains that his shoulders were busted, along with his ribs. Aaron tells him to hang on, but it doesn't look good. Evelyn injects him with morphine and tells the other two that his Kevlar saved his life. He is stable for now, but they critically need the supplies from the plane to help him. Walter tells them that Helen was their survival expert, asking how the hell they were going to do that. Evelyn then states that they all knew the risks coming here, before telling Walter to help her make a stretcher. We see him walk out to look for some wood, as Aaron tells him that was Kong they just saw. Walter reaches the mouth of the cave and tells them that they are not alone. Aaron tells him that they already realized that, and Walter repeats himself, saying, "No, I mean, we're not alone." We hear Aaron's voice on the recording say, "Just one thing, Dad. I remember you said in your files that the locals never talk." We then see a young native boy and his tribe speaking in English. He greets them and says that they have come at last. He moves closer and tells them not to be afraid, as they mean them no harm. He explains his name was Atto, and that his people had been waiting for them, calling the crew Awati. Aaron is surprised to hear him speak English, but Walter asks what he meant by Awati. Atto then reassuringly says, "Yes, you, Awati, the people who come from the sky." And that is the end of the first volume to Skull Island, The Birth of Kong. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit like and to subscribe to stay up to date on all my content. Also, check out my Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. Subscribe to my Facebook to find out what content is coming out next and when. Alright guys, stay awesome. Niad here with Film Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.